It was just after noon when the city came alive with its usual weekday pulse, the endless rhythm of footsteps, horns, and the low murmur of conversations spilling through glass doors. On the corner of Main and 7th stood Bellevue's, the kind of restaurant that tried too hard to look upscale. Clean marble floors, polished cutlery, and a chandelier that never quite matched the mood of the place. Inside, the air carried a mix of roasted coffee, garlic butter, and something else, the scent of tension. The lunch rush had started early, and Amber, the head waitress, was already at her breaking point. She moved through the aisles with the kind of precision that comes from habit, not passion. Her white shirt was crisp, her hair pulled tight, her smile mechanical. Years of service had turned it into muscle memory. But behind that smile, something restless stirred. The quiet bitterness of someone who'd given too much and received too little. Amber had once dreamed of owning her own cafe. Now, at 31, she worked double shifts just to keep the lights on in her apartment. Every customer's complaint, every undertipped bill chipped away at her pride. And lately, she'd started noticing something ugly growing inside her. A habit of looking down on people she thought didn't belong in places like Bellevue's. She wouldn't admit it out loud, but it made her feel powerful. At the far end of the restaurant, the glass doors opened, and a small gust of wind carried in the faint sound of city traffic. That's when Serena walked in. Everything about her presence was quiet, graceful, composed. She wore a soft cream dress that caught the sunlight and a pair of simple pearl earrings. At her side were 2 children, a little boy no older than 7 holding his mother's hand, and a teenage girl with a curious, confident gaze. The host's stand was empty. Amber saw them first. For a moment she hesitated. Something about the woman's poise unsettled her, then forced herself forward. "Table for 3, she asked, her tone polite but distant. Serena smiled gently. "Yes, please." Amber grabbed 3 menus, leading them toward the center of the dining area. Not the nice window tables where she usually seated regulars, but one near the kitchen doors where servers rushed by every few seconds. She set the menus down, barely making eye contact. Serena didn't say anything. She simply nodded, still calm, and helped her son into his seat. Amber turned quickly, muttering under her breath. People think they can just walk in here dressed like that. The kitchen bell rang. "Another order up." She brushed off the moment and went back to the counter. But something about the woman's silence kept tugging at her attention. Across the room, Serena and her children were talking quietly. The little boy laughed, a pure, carefree sound that cut through the restaurant's background noise. Other diners glanced their way, some smiling. Serena's daughter leaned forward, asking her mother about the dessert tray, and Serena smiled, her hand resting lightly on the table. It was a simple moment, one of warmth and grace. But to Amber, it felt like a spotlight. She didn't understand it. The way that woman carried herself calm and unbothered made Amber feel small, invisible. When Serena raised her hand politely to call her over, Amber took a deep breath, pasted on a smile, and walked back to the table. "Yes?" Serena handed her the menu. "Could we have a kid's portion of the pasta, and maybe one of the salmon specials, please?" "And a lemonade," Amber tapped her pen. "We don't do special requests on the lunch menu." Serena blinked. "Oh, I thought the sign said..." "It doesn't matter what the sign says. Lunch specials are fixed. You'll have to pick something else." For a second, the whole table went quiet. The boy's smile faded. Serena looked at her, not angry, not offended, just quietly surprised. "I see," she said softly. "Then we'll have the standard pasta and water, thank you." Amber nodded sharply and turned away. At the counter, another waitress, Lydia, leaned over. "What's your problem today?" she whispered. Amber's jaw tightened. "Nothing. Just another entitled customer," Lydia frowned. She didn't seem entitled. "Looked nice, actually." Amber didn't reply. She just scribbled the order, pretending to focus on the next ticket. But deep down, something was shifting, a mix of irritation and unease. Because no matter how hard she tried to brush it off, she couldn't shake the image of that woman's eyes. Calm, kind, almost pitying. Minutes later, Amber returned to the table with their plates. The restaurant was louder now, the clatter of dishes mixing with chatter. She placed the plates down a little harder than necessary. A bit of sauce splattered on the table. Serena simply reached for a napkin and cleaned it, saying nothing. Amber's patience snapped. "You know," she said suddenly, her voice just a touch too loud, "next time, maybe check the menu online before coming. We don't really do family-style orders here during lunch." Serena looked up, her expression unreadable. "I understand," she said. "Thank you for letting me know." Her tone was kind. Too kind. It threw Amber off balance. Around them, a few customers had turned to look. Lydia, from behind the counter, mouthed silently, "Stop." But Amber couldn't. Something about that quiet dignity felt like an insult. Like being looked down on without a single word. So she smiled coldly, turned, and walked away. From across the room, the manager, Mr. Hale, had seen the whole thing. He leaned against the doorframe to his office, watching with narrowed eyes. Serena's son tugged on her sleeve. "Mom, why was she mean?" Serena smiled faintly, brushing a hand through his hair. "Sometimes people forget how to be kind, baby. We just remind them by example." The boy nodded, trying to understand. Serena looked toward the counter where Amber was arguing with another waitress about tips. For a brief moment, their eyes met again. Serena's expression didn't hold anger, just something deep and knowing, as if she'd seen people like Amber before, and pitied them more than she blamed them. Amber looked away first. The clock above the register ticked to 12:47 p.m. The sound of the kitchen door swinging open filled the air. Somewhere outside, a black sedan pulled up to the curb, its engine idling low. Serena glanced at her phone, then back at her children. "It's almost time," she murmured. Amber didn't hear her. She was too busy glaring at a bill she didn't like, her frustration growing by the second. Mr. Hale stepped closer, folding his arms. He'd seen enough to know trouble was brewing, but not enough to understand what kind. And in that quiet, crowded restaurant on Main Street, where the smell of roasted garlic hung heavy in the air, a small act of disrespect had just set off a chain of events that none of them could take back. Because in exactly 15 minutes, the woman Amber had just insulted, the one sitting quietly with her children, would be joined by someone who didn't take disrespect lightly. Someone the city feared, but no one dared to name. The lunch crowd thickened as the clock struck 1. Plates clattered, laughter echoed, and the smell of grilled salmon floated through the air. But at the center of all that noise, tension simmered quietly between two tables. One with a woman who'd come for peace, and another with a waitress who'd forgotten what that word meant. Amber wiped her hands on her apron, glaring at the table she wished she could forget. Serena and her kids were eating quietly, unbothered. They hadn't complained once. That, somehow, made Amber even angrier. It wasn't the kind of anger you could see. It was quiet, the kind that brews under your ribs, whispering ugly thoughts that make you believe you're right. She watched Serena cut the pasta into small pieces for her son, smiling at him the whole time. Something about that calm, polished grace twisted in Amber's chest. Who does she think she is? A group of office workers at the next table called for refills. Amber hurried over, plastering on her professional smile. But even as she poured iced tea, her eyes drifted back toward Serena's table again and again, drawn by something she didn't understand. Then, it happened. The little boy reached for his glass of water, and it tipped, ice scattered across the table. The water splashed across Amber's clean floor, gliding toward her shoes. She froze. Everyone nearby turned their heads. Serena immediately stood, grabbing napkins, whispering to her son, "It's okay, baby. It's just water." But Amber's irritation boiled over. "Are you kidding me?" she snapped, a little louder than she meant to. The boy looked up, startled. Serena straightened, still calm. "I'm sorry, it was an accident. I'll clean it up." Amber forced a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "No, I'll handle it. That's my job, apparently." A few heads turned. One woman at another table frowned. Amber knelt to wipe the floor, her movements sharp and quick, muttering under her breath. Some people just don't know how to act in public. Serena's daughter heard it, and so did Serena. The air around them shifted. For a moment, the restaurant's usual chatter dimmed, like the world was holding its breath. Serena didn't raise her voice, didn't argue. She just looked down at Amber, her tone quiet, steady. "You don't have to speak to us that way. Amber froze mid-wipe. The words weren't angry, they were disappointed. Somehow that hurt more. She stood up slowly, clutching the napkin. "I'm just doing my job," Serena nodded gently. "I understand. But doing your job doesn't mean losing your kindness." Amber's jaw clenched. She didn't respond. She couldn't, because every eye in the room was on her now. Lydia whispered from the counter, "Amber, just let it go." But Amber couldn't. Pride had already taken over. She turned to Serena, voice lower but sharper. "Look, lady, I don't know what you're used to, but around here, people respect the staff. You can't just—" Before she could finish, Serena's phone buzzed. She took it out calmly, glanced at the screen, and answered. Her voice softened, a tone filled with quiet authority. "Yes, we're here. You can send them in," Amber frowned. "Send who in?" she muttered, but Serena didn't reply. She simply slipped her phone back into her purse and gave her son a reassuring smile. Across the room, Mr. Hale had seen enough. He motioned Amber toward the counter. "Now," he said firmly. Amber stormed over, frustration burning in her chest. "You saw that, right? She started it. Hale cut her off." "No, Amber, you did." That woman didn't raise her voice once. Amber blinked, stunned. "You're taking her side?" "I'm taking the side of professionalism," he replied. "If she complains, corporate will have my head." "Go in the back, take 5 minutes." Amber stared at him, shaking her head. Unbelievable. She turned toward the kitchen doors, but froze when the bell above the entrance chimed. The restaurant went silent. Through the glass doors stepped 2 men in dark suits, their movements deliberate, confident, and too coordinated to be casual. They didn't belong in a place like this, not in their tailored coats and quiet, sharp energy. Every table fell quiet. Amber frowned. "Great, now what?" The taller man scanned the room. His gaze landed on Serena's table. Serena met his eyes and nodded once. He leaned toward the other man and murmured something before they both stepped aside. A black car had pulled up outside, its engine still running, and from the back seat, another figure emerged, tall, composed, dressed in a perfectly cut charcoal suit. He walked with an ease that didn't come from confidence but from control. As he entered, the low light caught on the silver of his watch and the steel edge of his gaze. People moved without being told. A pathway formed naturally, as if the air itself made room for him. Amber watched, frozen, as he stopped right in front of her. His eyes were dark, calm but unreadable. He glanced at her name tag. Amber, her heart skipped. "Yes?" "Move," he said quietly. There was no threat in his tone, but something in his voice carried the weight of finality, the kind of authority you didn't question. Amber stepped aside automatically. The man walked past her, each step deliberate until he reached Serena's table. Serena stood, her children beaming. He leaned down, kissed her forehead gently, and whispered something that made her smile. The room erupted into whispers. Amber's blood ran cold. Lydia whispered from the counter. "Amber." "That's him. That's Lucas Knight." Amber turned slowly. "Who?" Lydia's eyes widened. "Lucas Knight. The one they say runs half the city. The one people don't cross." Amber's breath caught. The words hit like a punch. She turned back to the table. Serena's husband, the man the city feared, was now sitting calmly beside his family, helping his son with his napkin like any ordinary father. But the way the staff looked at him said otherwise. Amber felt her throat tighten. She took a step back, her mind spinning. Every sharp word, every glare she'd thrown at Serena replayed in her head like an echo she couldn't stop. Her knees felt weak. Across the room, Serena looked up. Their eyes met once more. This time there was no pity in her gaze, only quiet understanding, and something like mercy. Mr. Hale's voice broke the silence. "Amber," he said, low but firm, "my office, now." Amber couldn't move, because deep down, she knew this wasn't just about a bad shift anymore. Something far bigger had just walked into Bellevue's, and it had her name written all over it. The part of your story that touches on crime or organized. Groups can't show or glorify criminal activity. violence, or intimidation, to keep it cinematic and fully compliant with content policies. I'll frame Lucas Knight not as an actual mafia leader, but as a man with a mysterious, powerful background. Someone influential, feared because of his reach and reputation, not because of illegal acts. That way, it feels just as tense and dramatic without crossing any lines. The restaurant had fallen into that strange, breath-held silence that happens when something or someone bigger than the room walks in. The sound of forks scraping plates faded first, then the laughter, until only the hum of the air conditioner filled the space. Amber stood rooted beside the counter. Her pulse thundered in her ears as the tall man in the charcoal suit crossed the floor, his polished shoes striking the tile with unhurried precision. Every movement said one thing: control. Lucas Knight didn't glance left or right. He didn't need to. People moved for him instinctively, chairs sliding back, conversations dying mid-sentence. His presence was gravity itself, silent, heavy, impossible to ignore. He reached Serena's table, and the change in the air was immediate. The woman who had sat so calmly through humiliation now looked complete. The faint lines of tension in her shoulders melted. Her son's face lit up, the little boy springing from his seat into his father's waiting arms. Lucas lifted him easily, smiling, an expression that softened everything about him. It was the first real smile anyone in the room had seen from him, and somehow that made it even more disarming. He sat, the boy in his lap, and spoke quietly to Serena. No one could hear the words, but the tone was unmistakable. Warmth, protection, love. Amber's stomach twisted. That's her husband? Mr. Hale stepped from behind the counter, trying to appear composed. Mr. Knight, he said cautiously, welcome. We didn't know you'd be joining us today. Lucas turned his head slightly, offering a polite nod. We were in the neighborhood. His voice was smooth, deep, cultured, the kind that could make threats sound like compliments. Serena gave her husband's hand a gentle squeeze. It's fine, darling, she murmured. Amber wished the floor would swallow her whole. She could feel every glance in the room pressing against her back. Lydia's wide eyes said everything. You really picked the wrong customer today. Lucas's attention shifted. He looked around the restaurant slowly, studying faces, the layout, the service, until finally, inevitably, his gaze landed on Amber. Their eyes met. For one long, unbearable second, she couldn't breathe. Then he said, You must be Amber, her voice cracked. Yes, sir. He stood, placing his son gently back in the chair, and walked toward her. The sound of his footsteps was soft but absolute. When he stopped, he was close enough that she could smell the faint cologne, clean, expensive, understated. I hear you were attentive to my family, he said. His tone was neutral, unreadable. Amber swallowed. Yes, sir. I tried. He tilted his head, studying her. Tried? Words failed her. Across the room, Serena rose quietly, approaching them. She touched her husband's arm. Lucas, she said softly, it's all right. He didn't look at her, not immediately. His gaze stayed on Amber for a moment longer before he nodded once and turned back to his wife. If you say so. Mr. Hale hurried over, clearly terrified of losing his best-paying clients, or worse. Mr. Knight, perhaps we could move to the office to sort things privately? Lucas agreed with a simple gesture, as if granting permission rather than accepting an offer. Amber felt her knees weaken. She wanted to run, to hide, but her name had already been spoken aloud. Hale's hand motioned sharply. Inside, now. The office door closed behind them, muting the noise of the dining room. The cramped space smelled of paper, sanitizer, and fear. Hale tried to speak first. Mr. Knight, I want to apologize on behalf of the staff. Amber's behavior was... Lucas lifted a hand. Let her speak. Amber looked up, startled.
Sir, I didn't mean... I was having a bad day and I said some things I shouldn't have.
I didn't realize who she was. Lucas's eyes narrowed slightly. Who she was. Amber froze. Serena stepped forward. He means you didn't realize she was a person, she said gently, finishing the sentence for her. Lucas exhaled slowly, almost a sigh. People shouldn't need a title to be treated with respect. Amber's throat burned. She couldn't look at either of them. I'm sorry, she whispered, Serena's voice was calm, steady. Apologies heal more when they come with change. Hale spoke up quickly. Of course. She'll be disciplined immediately. Lucas turned to him. No, that won't be necessary. Hale blinked. Sir? Lucas reached into his jacket, pulled out a sleek business card, and placed it on the desk in front of Amber. The black lettering shimmered faintly in the office light. If you want to start over, he said, call this number. Tell them Serena recommended you. Amber stared at it, confused. I don't understand, Serena smiled. It's a position at one of our hotels. They're always looking for people who've learned the value of humility. Amber's voice trembled. You'd still help me? After what I said. Serena met her eyes. Everyone has a story behind their behavior. Maybe it's time you write a new one. The office was silent. Even Hale looked moved, unsure what to say. Lucas finally added, consider this your warning, and your chance. Then, softer, don't waste it. He turned, opening the office door. The sound of the restaurant returned, the muted hum of a world that had gone on without them. Serena followed her husband out, pausing just long enough to look back. Thank you for the service, she said kindly. And she meant it. Amber sat motionless, the card still between her fingers, her reflection trembling in its glossy surface. Outside the glass window of the office, she saw Lucas help Serena with her coat, his hand resting at the small of her back, his expression warm again. The door chimed as they left, the black car waiting just beyond the curb. Amber's chest tightened. She'd spent years believing that power looked like money, or status, or control. But watching that couple disappear into the city's bright afternoon light, she realized she'd just witnessed something far rarer, power tempered by grace. For the first time in years, she felt small in the best possible way. Evening settled over the city like a slow exhale. By the time Amber left Bellevue's, the streets were already slick with the first drops of rain. She walked fast, her apron still in her bag, the day's weight hanging from her shoulders like wet fabric. Every window she passed reflected her face back at her. Tired eyes, streaks of mascara, the look of someone who'd run out of excuses. Inside her mind, the day replayed in fragments. Serena's calm voice, the quiet strength of the man beside her, the card that now sat heavy in her pocket. For years she'd told herself she was a survivor, not a villain. She'd blamed rude customers, bad tips, broken promises. But tonight she couldn't hide behind that armor. The mirror had been held up to her, and it had looked nothing like the person she wanted to be. She reached her apartment, a small unit above a laundromat that hummed all night. The key stuck in the lock as always. The single lamp in the corner flickered on, throwing uneven light across a stack of unpaid bills. Amber dropped into the chair by the window and pulled the business card out of her pocket. The gold letters caught the lamplight. Knight Enterprises. Serena Knight. Her thumb traced the edges. It didn't look like a lifeline. It looked like judgment. She thought of her mother then, a woman who'd once worked 2 jobs and still found time to smile at strangers. Kindness doesn't cost, her mother used to say, but it pays back double. Amber hadn't believed her. Not until today. Outside, a siren wailed faintly in the distance. Somewhere someone laughed beneath an umbrella. Life was carrying on, indifferent. She took a deep breath and opened her old notebook, the one she hadn't touched in years. Inside were coffee-stained pages filled with ideas for her own cafe, sketches of cups, scribbled menu names, dreams she'd buried under fatigue. Her handwriting looked foreign to her now. But it also looked alive. Amber closed her eyes. The quiet of the room pressed against her. She whispered into it, half a prayer, half a promise. I can do better. I will. The next morning broke clean and gold after the storm. The city smelled of wet asphalt and new beginnings. Amber woke early for once without the alarm. She put on her plainest clothes, tied her hair back loosely, and took the train across town. When she arrived at the Knight Enterprises building, she almost turned back. The glass tower rose above everything, reflecting sunlight like a challenge. People in tailored suits streamed through the doors, confident, unhurried. Amber hesitated at the entrance. Her reflection in the glass looked small, but not weak. just small in a world she'd never dared to enter. She stepped inside. The lobby was quiet, filled with soft piano music and the scent of fresh lilies. At the reception desk, a young woman smiled. "Good morning." "How can I help you?" Amber cleared her throat. I was told to come here by Mrs. Knight." The receptionist's eyes flicked to the card Amber held out, and something in her posture changed. "Of course," she said warmly. "Please wait one moment." Amber sat in one of the leather chairs, heart pounding. Around her, people spoke in low voices, flipping through tablets and folders. She felt completely out of place. A waitress in a room full of polished ambition. Then a door opened. Serena Knight herself stepped into the lobby, wearing a soft grey coat and that same composed smile. Amber shot to her feet. "Mrs. Knight," Serena lifted a hand. "Just Serena." Amber nodded, too nervous to speak. Serena looked at her for a long moment, then said, "You came." "I had to," Amber murmured. "You gave me a chance." Serena's smile deepened. "Then let's make sure it matters." She gestured for Amber to follow. They walked through a hallway filled with light, the kind that seems to wash old guilt away. Serena spoke as they moved. "Most people think redemption is about apology. It isn't. It's about choosing what you do next." Amber listened, the words sinking deep. Serena stopped in front of a door marked Community Partnerships Office. Inside, people were sorting food boxes, planning events, laughing over coffee. "We fund training programs for local hospitality workers," Serena explained. "We help people get back on their feet." "You'd be perfect here." Amber's throat tightened. "I don't know if I deserve that." Serena turned to her. "No one starts deserving grace, Amber. That's why it's called grace." For the first time in years, tears welled in Amber's eyes, not from frustration, but relief. Serena placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Start today. Help them set up, learn, listen, and when you're ready, maybe open that cafe you used to dream about." Amber froze. "How did you—" Serena smiled. "Your notebook fell out of your apron yesterday." I looked inside. "You have talent. Don't bury it under anger again." Amber nodded, unable to speak. As Serena walked away, the narrator's voice, the feeling behind the room, seemed to say what Amber could not, that sometimes the hardest forgiveness is the one you offer yourself. Amber slipped into the office, joining the group at the tables. The smell of coffee and cardboard mixed in the air, familiar and comforting. She picked up a clipboard, ready to start. Outside, the clouds broke open to reveal a wide blue sky. The same city that had felt cruel yesterday now looked full of promise. Amber smiled faintly. "A new story," she whispered. "Nothing violent or vengeful, just emotional payoff, closure, and a sense of ongoing life. If this outline sounds right, I'll write the full cinematic narrator version, 2,000 words, next." Morning light dripped over the skyline, soft and golden, washing the streets clean of their usual hurry. Inside the community cafe on 7th and Maple, the hiss of the espresso machine mixed with the sound of quiet laughter. The air smelled of roasted beans and fresh pastry. Amber wiped the counter and smiled at the line of regulars who now greeted her by name. It had been 6 months since she'd first walked into Knight Enterprises, with nothing but a business card and guilt in her pocket. 6 months since she'd decided to start over. Now, she managed the small cafe the foundation had built for job training. Her apron was still black, but it no longer felt like armor. It felt like purpose. She glanced around at her team, a single mother learning to make cappuccinos, a former dishwasher practicing customer service, a nervous teen barista whose hands trembled when the milk steamed. They reminded Amber of herself, and that kept her humble. When a new customer spilled coffee and mumbled an apology, Amber laughed softly. "Don't worry about it. Everyone spills something once in a while." The woman smiled, relieved. And Amber felt the quiet joy of realizing how far she'd come. The bell over the door jingled then, and the room seemed to pause. Serena Knight stepped inside, her coat a deep ocean blue, her expression bright but unassuming. Amber froze for a heartbeat, then broke into a grin. Serena," she said, hurrying forward. "You actually came." "I told you I would," Serena replied, setting her purse down on a corner table. I hear this place makes the best latte art in the city, Amber laughed. Whoever told you that might be exaggerating. Maybe, Serena said, smiling. But they also said the manager runs the place with heart. Amber flushed slightly. We're trying. Every day's still a learning curve. Serena looked around. The chalkboard menus, the plants in repurposed coffee tins, the wall of Polaroids showing staff and customers smiling together. Looks like you're doing more than trying. Looks like you're building community. Amber hesitated, her voice quieter now. You gave me a chance I didn't earn. I just didn't want to waste it. Serena's gaze softened. You didn't waste it. You transformed it. That's rarer. The words settled between them like sunlight. After a while, Serena sipped her coffee and said, We're expanding the program. I'd like you to help train the new hires, show them what change looks like. Amber's hands trembled slightly as she nodded. I'd love to. Outside, the day brightened. The cafe filled again with movement. A group of young volunteers entered, carrying boxes of fresh beans. Amber stepped forward to greet them. One of the girls, barely 20, wide-eyed and nervous, spilled a handful of sugar packets across the floor. Her cheeks flushed crimson. Amber knelt beside her, gathering the packets. Hey, it's okay. Happens to everyone. The girl's shoulders eased. Amber gave her a reassuring smile. You'll be fine. First days are always messy. Just breathe. As Amber stood, she caught Serena watching her with quiet pride. In that moment, the two women, once separated by misunderstanding and anger, were simply human, both shaped by the choices they'd made after a single, difficult day. The camera of imagination might have pulled back then, the cafe glowing against the street, laughter spilling out with the sound of cups and steam, Amber's voice fading into the hum of the city. If there were words to close it, they would sound like this. Every person carries a story they're ashamed to tell. But sometimes, when grace walks through the door, that story gets a new chapter. Amber had found hers. Not through luck, not through mercy, but through the quiet courage to begin again. And as the light outside turned warmer, she smiled, serving another cup to a stranger. Because you never know whose heart might be changed next.